Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm here with our legal expert to tackle something really important today.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get into this one,
So, to our listener, we know your mission right now. You are grinding away, preparing for the MBE, the multi-state bar examination.
which is brutal enough on its own, honestly.
Right. And doing it while balancing English as a second language, that is a massive challenge.
It really is. The legal jargon is basically a third language anyway.
Exactly. So our goal for this deep dive is to strip all that dense, archaic jargon away. We're going to translate these concepts into simple, clear English so the rules actually stick in your head on exam day.
That's the plan. Keep it simple, keep it memorable.
And today's topic is a big one from our source notes. We are unpacking the Statute of Frauds.
Oh, the classic trap.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this because, most of the time, a spoken promise is a totally valid contract. Like, if I say, I'll buy your old bike for $50, and you say, deal, we have a contract.
Yep, no lawyers needed.
But today, we're looking at the exceptions, the times when the law steps in and says, if it's not on paper, it doesn't count.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is, well, the statute of frauds isn't actually about making deals impossible to do.
It's not.
No, not at all. It's really about requiring proof. It's for the types of deals where, memories get fuzzy or the stakes are just way too high.
Oh, so it's like a shield.
Exactly. Hundreds of years ago in England, people were literally hiring professional liars to go into court and swear they had a verbal agreement to steal land or money.
Wow. Professional liars. Okay, so the law needed a physical requirement to stop the fraud, hence the Statute of Frauds.
You got it. It demands a writing for certain high-risk contracts.
Okay, so before we look at which contracts need to be in writing, which is that famous MSLOU list, we first need to figure out what a writing actually is.
Right, because the legal definition of writing is much, much broader than most people think.
Yeah, I feel like when you hear legal writing, you picture this giant stack of paper with a fancy blue cover and 20 signatures.
Right, but the baseline rule is that oral contracts are generally enforceable, unless they fall under the statute of frauds. And if they do, the writing requirement is actually shockingly informal.
Really? How informal are we talking?
Well, it just needs to meet two basic requirements.
Mhm.
First, it has to be signed by the party to be charged. And second, it has to contain the essential elements of the deal.
Okay, let's slow down and translate that first part. Party to be charged. For someone where English is a second language, that sounds like someone is getting arrested or something.
Yeah, it's a terrible phrase. Basically, the party to be charged is just the person you are trying to enforce the contract against.
So the person who is trying to back out of the deal.
Exactly. If you and I make a deal and I try to run away from it and you sue me, I am the party to be charged.
Got it. But wait, so the writing only needs your signature? The person being sued? It doesn't need both of our signatures.
Just mine, just the defendant's.
Wait, really? That feels like a massive MBE trick.
Oh, it is. The examiners love to test this. The memo doesn't have to be a formal contract signed by everybody. It just needs the signature of the person denying the deal.
Why only them?
Because, think about it, if you're the one filing the lawsuit, the court already knows you want the deal. Your lawsuit is your proof. They just need proof that I agreed to it at some point.
Oh, okay, that makes perfect sense. So the defendant's signature plus the essential elements of the deal.
Right. Who the parties are, what the subject is, the basic terms. And honestly, it can be on a receipt, a napkin, a casual email.
Wait, a napkin?
Yeah, totally. And it doesn't even have to be just one piece of paper. You can string the essential elements together across multiple different notes or letters as long as they reference each other.
Okay, so a chain of emails hashing out a deal works, but let's clarify the lost or destroyed rule from the notes because this is wild.
Yeah, this is a big conceptual shift.
So if I scribble a deal with you on a napkin and you sign it, and then I walk outside and accidentally drop it in a puddle of water, it's ruined. Is the contract dead?
No, the contract is not dead.
But the paper is mush. It's like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. The paper was just proof the breadcrumb existed, right?
But how do you enforce a puddle of mush in a courtroom?
You enforce it with oral evidence. See, you have to separate the actual agreement from the evidence of the agreement.
Okay.
The contract is the invisible deal between us. The paper was just the proof. If the paper is destroyed by accident, its prior existence can be proved by outside oral evidence.
Oh, so I can just put someone on the witness stand to say, yeah, I saw that signed napkin before you dropped it.
Exactly. The paper's only job was to satisfy the statute of frauds by existing at some point. Its physical destruction doesn't destroy your legal obligation.
That is such a good way to picture it. And the notes also say the memo doesn't need to be written at the time the promise is made.
Right, you can make an oral deal on Monday, which is completely unenforceable, but then on Wednesday, I write a letter to my mother complaining about the terrible deal I just made with you.
Wait, a letter to your mom? Yep. Dear Mom, I agreed to sell my car to the host for $5,000, and I sign it.
And I can use that against you.
You absolutely can.
Right.
It has the essential terms, and it's signed by me, the party to be charged. It doesn't matter that it was written later, and it doesn't matter that it wasn't addressed to you.
Wow. Okay, so any written proof that the deal happened, signed by the person backing out, will work.
Exactly.
Okay, so now that we know what a writing actually looks like, let's get into what types of contracts actually require one. This brings us to the famous MBE mnemonic, MSLOU.
MSLOU. Right. Marriage, suretyship, land, 1 year, and the UCC for goods.
Let's take these one by one, nice and easy. Starting with M, marriage. Now, this isn't just about getting a marriage license, right?
No, not at all. This applies to contracts made upon consideration of marriage.
Consideration meaning, like, the thing of value being traded.
Right. It means you are using the act of getting married as the currency to buy something else, like a prenuptial agreement.
Okay, so like, I'll give you the deed to my house, but only if you marry me.
Exactly. Because the financial and emotional stakes are so high, the law wants that on paper.
But wait, what about just a normal engagement? Like, I promise to marry you if you promise to marry me. Does that need a contract?
No, thankfully. Mutual promises to marry each other are the big exception here.
Hmm.
An ordinary engagement doesn't trigger the statute of frauds.
That because pulling out a legal pad before proposing would totally ruin the moment.
You really would.
Yeah.
So yeah, ordinary engagements are safe.
All right, moving on to the S in MSLOU. Suretyship. Now, this is a word that is just so clunky. Let's break this down into a relatable, simple English scenario.
Good idea. Suretyship is always a three-party dynamic. You have the principal, the obligee, and the surety.
Okay, let's define those roles. Say my friend wants to buy a truck for his business, but he has bad credit.
Okay, your friend is the principal. He's the one who actually needs the loan. He's the primary debtor.
Right.
Yeah.
And he goes to the bank for the loan. So the bank is...
The bank is the obligee. They are the creditor handing out the money.
Got it. But the bank says no. So I step in to help my friend. I am the surety.
Yes. You're the backup plan.
So I walk into the bank, and I promise the bank that I will pay them if my friend defaults on the truck loan. That is suretyship.
Exactly. You are promising to answer for the debt of another person, and the rule is absolute. That promise must be in writing to be enforced against you.
But here's where the exam gets tricky. What if I never go to the bank? What if I just promise my friend, like, hey, man, if you can't pay the bank, I promise I'll give you the cash?
If you do that, you don't trigger the rule.
Wait, really? Why not?
Because the rule only applies if the surety makes the promise directly to the creditor, the obligee.
Oh. So if I just promise my friend I'll help him out, an oral promise is totally fine.
Yep, it's just a regular contract at that point.
Hmm.
The statute of frauds only cares if you are guaranteeing the debt directly to the person owed the money.
That is a huge exam note right there. Promise to the bank, needs paper, promise to the friend, oral's fine.
Precisely. And while we're on suretyship, we have to talk about exceptions, like indemnity contracts.
Right, indemnity. How is that different from suretyship?
Well, suretyship is promising to pay a specific debt for someone else. Indemnity is much broader. It's a promise to reimburse someone for a monetary loss, period.
Like an insurance policy?
Kind of, yeah. Like if I tell a stadium owner, I'll cover any financial losses you have from hosting my event. That's an original promise to cover a loss, not a backup promise to pay someone's specific loan. So oral indemnity contracts are usually enforceable.
Okay, makes sense. But the bigger exception for suretyship, and this one is so interesting, is the main purpose exception.
Oh, the exam loves this one. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes perfect sense.
Just so.
Well, remember why the statute of frauds exists?
Yeah.
To prevent fraud, to stop people from making up fake claims.
Right.
So the main purpose exception says if you, the surety, are guaranteeing the debt primarily for your own economic advantage, rather than just being a nice friend, then an oral promise is totally enforceable.
Wait, let me test this. So in my truck example, if I'm just helping my friend because we go way back, my main purpose is to benefit him, so I need a writing.
Correct. Gratuitous promises are suspicious to the law.
But what if I am a real estate developer and I hired my friend's landscaping company for a massive project? If his truck breaks down, he can't finish my project, and I lose $1 million bonus.
Okay, great hypothetical.
So I call the mechanic and orally guarantee my friend's repair bill just so I can get his truck back on my site to save my own bonus.
In that case, an oral promise binds you.
Because I'm being selfish.
Yes, because your main purpose is your own direct economic advantage. The law assumes that if you're acting out of pure self-interest, the risk of this being a fraudulent claim is super low. The mechanic isn't making it up. You clearly had a greedy motive to make that promise.
Wow. So your self-interest basically proves the deal happened, so no paper needed. That is so practical.
It's very practical.
All right, so we've covered marriage and suretyship. Now we move from financial guarantees to physical permanence, the L in MSLOU land.
Yes. Land and the one-year rule, the O, are the most heavily tested areas because they constantly overlap.
Let's start with land. The rule says a contract for an interest in land needs a writing. But the notes highlight a big distinction here for the MBE. It's about a contract for the subsequent conveyance of land, right? Not the conveyance itself.
Exactly. It's a two-step timeline. Step 1 is the contract. I promise to sell you my farm next month. That promise needs a writing.
And step 2?
Step 2 is the actual conveyance next month, where I hand you the physical deed to the farm. That's governed by real estate law. The statute of frauds only cares about step 1, the initial promise.
Okay. And this applies to transferring or buying any interest in land, right? Not just buying the whole property.
Right. It covers leases and easements, which is the right to cross someone's land. But here is where the L rule bumps into the O rule.
The one-year rule.
Yes. There's an exception. If you have a lease or an easement that is for exactly 1 year or less, it does not need a writing.
Okay, so an oral lease for 9 months. Totally fine.
Perfectly valid.
An oral lease for 13 months. Void.
Exactly.
Okay, but what if we mess up? What if we make a purely oral agreement that I'll buy your land for $50,000, no writing, it's technically void, but then we start doing things?
Ah, you're talking about the part performance exception.
Yes. Let's talk about how actions replace words.
So, if an oral land contract is technically void, the buyer can save it if they perform certain significant actions. The law generally looks for 2 out of 3 specific things.
And what are the 3 things?
1, payment of all or part of the purchase price. 2, taking physical possession of the land. And 3, making substantial improvements to the property.
So if I give you 25 grand, move my trailer onto the empty lot, and pour a huge concrete foundation.
You've done all 3. Most states only require 2. If you do those things, the judge will look at that and say, clearly a contract existed here. Your physical actions are the proof. They substitute for the missing piece of paper.
That makes total sense. You wouldn't pour concrete on a stranger's lawn for no reason. Now, there's also full performance. Our source notes give a really specific example for this. Let's say we have a face-to-face oral agreement. You agree to sell me your land for 50 grand. A week later, you actually hand me the legal deed, and I accept it.
Okay, so the seller has fully performed their side.
Right. Can you then sue me to enforce my oral promise to pay you the 50 grand?
Yes, you can.
But wait, why? I never signed anything promising to pay. Why doesn't the statute of frauds protect me as the buyer?
Because if it did, you would just get a free farm. The law hates unjust enrichment. If the seller actually gives you the land and you take it, the seller can enforce your oral promise to pay. You can't use the statute of frauds to commit legalized robbery.
Oh, wow. Okay, so full performance by the seller forces the buyer to pay up. Good to know.
Definitely. Unjust enrichment is a huge underlying theme in contract law.
Speaking of which, that brings us right into the one-year provision. This is notoriously tricky.
It really is.
So the rule is, contracts that cannot be performed within 1 year from the making of the contract must be in writing. And the clock starts the day after the contract is made.
Right. But the trick here is understanding how courts interpret the word cannot. Judges actually really dislike this rule.
Why do they dislike it?
Because it often feels like a harsh technicality that lets bad faith actors wiggle out of promises just because a project took a long time. So, to keep deals alive, judges interpret the rule using a standard of absolute theoretical impossibility.
Absolute theoretical impossibility. What does that mean in practice?
It means the test isn't whether it's likely to take more than a year. It's whether it's physically possible using superhuman effort to finish it in a year.
Okay, I need an example. Let's say I orally hire a company to build a massive, complex suspension bridge. Everyone agrees it's a 10-year project. Does that oral contract need a writing?
Under the absolute impossibility test, Probably not.
Wait, really? A 10-year bridge?
Yes. Because you have to ask, if they hired 1 million workers with unlimited money, working 204/7 with perfect weather, could they theoretically finish it in 10 months?
I mean, I guess maybe.
Right? Even if there's a 0.01% chance, it's theoretically possible to perform within a year. Therefore, it does not fall under the statute of frauds. An oral contract for a 10-year bridge is valid.
That is wild. So it's not about likelihood at all. What does trigger the rule then?
Explicit time constraints. If I hire you and say, you will work for me for exactly 2 years, you cannot mathematically work for 2 years within 1 year. That absolutely requires a writing.
Okay, I see the difference. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and this connects back to unjust enrichment. What if someone orally agrees to work for 2 years? No writing, it's void. But they actually show up and work for 6 months, and then the boss fires them and refuses to pay, saying the contract was invalid. Do they just get nothing?
This is such a great question. And it forces us to separate part performance from restitution.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, we just learned that part performance can save a land contract, right? Like pouring the concrete.
Right.
But in employment, part performance does not save a multi-year oral contract. Working for 6 months does not magically validate the void 2-year deal. You cannot sue the boss for the remaining 18 months of wages.
Ah, okay. The contract itself is truly dead.
Yes, but the employee doesn't get nothing. The boss can't just keep 6 months of free labor. That's unjust enrichment.
Right.
So the employee can sue for restitution. The court will force the boss to pay the fair market value for the 6 months of work that was actually performed.
That is so fair. So the contract is dead, but you still get paid for your sweat equity.
Exactly. Fairness prevails over the strict technicality.
Okay, this is a great pivot point. We've talked about marriage, suretyship, land, and 1 year. These are all common law concepts dealing with services and real estate, but the modern world runs on the sale of goods.
Yes, it does. Welcome to the U in MSLOU, the UCC.
The Uniform Commercial Code. This is where the MBE loves to test the boundary lines.
Because the UCC operates on a totally different philosophy than common law. The UCC is designed for business. It wants to facilitate trade, not kill deals with technicalities.
So for the statute of frauds, the UCC rule is contracts for the sale of goods for $500 or more need a writing.
Right. $500 is the magic threshold.
And what does that writing have to look like? Our notes say there are 4 requirements.
Yes. It must indicate a contract was made, identify the parties, contain a quantity term, and be signed by the party to be charged.
Wait, I'm looking at that list. Indicate a contract, parties, quantity, signature. Something is missing there. Where is the price?
Ah, it's not there.
So what does this all mean for the price? If I write down on a napkin, I agree to buy 100 widgets from your expert, and you sign it, and we totally forget to write down the price. The contract is still valid under the UCC.
Yes, it is a totally valid contract.
But how? How does a judge enforce a contract if they don't know what I'm supposed to pay?
This is the beauty of the UCC. They use what are called gap fillers. If you forget the price or make a mistake, it doesn't destroy the memo. The judge can just look at the open market, see what the reasonable market price for widgets was that day, and fill in the blank for you using outside parole evidence.
Oh, wow. They literally just figure it out for you to keep the deal alive.
Exactly. It's extremely business-friendly.
But wait, if they are willing to gap fill the price, why is the quantity term so strictly required? The notes say enforcement is strictly limited to the quantity term stated in the writing.
Well, think about it from the judge's perspective. A judge can easily look up the market price of a ton of steel, right?
Yeah.
But a judge has absolutely no way of knowing how much steel your specific factory needs. They can't guess your appetite. If the quantity isn't written down, the judge would have to invent the entire scale of the deal out of thin air.
And that would just invite massive fraud.
Exactly. They can figure out the price, but they can't figure out the amount. So under the UCC, quantity is king. No quantity, no contract.
Okay, quantity is king. I love that. Now, just like common law, the UCC has strict rules, but it also has pragmatic exceptions designed for the real world of commerce. Like, if you don't have a writing for a $500 goods contract, how can you still enforce it?
There are 4 big exceptions here to memorize.
Let's run through them. First, specially manufactured goods.
Right. This is to protect custom manufacturers. Let's say you orally order custom goods that aren't suitable for sale to anyone else.
Okay, to make this simple for the exam, let's say I orally order a giant weird custom neon sign with my name on it for $2,000.
Okay, a $2,000 contract. Violates the statute.
Right. If I cancel before they start making it, I'm safe, right?
Yes.
But what if they've already bent all the glass and spent a bunch of money on materials?
Then the exception is triggered. If the seller has made a substantial beginning on the manufacture or made commitments to buy the custom materials, the oral contract becomes enforceable.
Because who else are they going to sell a neon sign with my name on it to?
Exactly. You can't stick them with the bill after they took action based on your promise.
So again, actions speak louder than words. Okay, what are the next two exceptions? They seem closely related.
Yeah, payment and acceptance and receipt and acceptance. They basically say that even without a writing, the contract is valid to the extent that it has actually been performed.
So if I orally order $1,000 worth of goods and I hand you a check for $400, the contract is valid for that $400.
Yes, valid to the extent payment is made.
And if I orally order 100 shares and you deliver 30 of them and I accept them and put them in my warehouse, the law says, come on, obviously there was a contract here.
Right. You can't just keep the 30 shares for free. It's valid to the extent the goods are received and accepted. But here's an MBE trap. Accepting part of a commercial unit equals accepting the whole thing.
What's a commercial unit?
Like a pair of shoes or a machine that comes in pieces. If you order a machine and you only unpack and accept the motor, you've legally accepted the entire machine. You owe the full price.
Oh, man. Good to know. Don't open the box if you want to cancel.
Pretty much.
Okay, the fourth UCC exception is a big one. The merchant's failure to respond.
Yes, the merchant's confirmatory memo. This is huge.
So this is only between two merchants, right? Not regular people?
Correct. Both parties have to be in the business of selling these goods.
Okay, so we're both electronics dealers. We make a fast phone deal for $50,000 worth of laptops. No writing.
So right now it's unenforceable.
Right. But the next day, I send you an email that says, confirming our deal for the laptops. And I sign it. You receive it, you read it, but you never reply. You just ignore it.
This raises an important question, because under common law, since I didn't sign it, you could never use it against me.
But under the UCC?
Under the UCC, the burden shifts entirely. If a merchant receives a confirming memo and doesn't object in writing within 10 days, that memo is fully enforceable against them, even without their signature.
Wait, my silence becomes my signature. Just because 10 days passed.
Yep. The UCC forces merchants to read their mail and actively object. It stops people from playing a wait-and-see game with market prices.
That is ruthless. 10 days to object or you're locked in.
It's ruthless, but it keeps commerce moving fast.
Okay, last big topic here. Modifications. What happens if we have a valid contract and then we want to change it?
The rule is simple. Look at the contract as modified. If the new modified deal hits the $500 threshold, the modification needs to be in writing.
So if our original written deal was for $400 of supplies and we call each other and verbally agree to increase it to $600.
That new $600 deal crosses the threshold. So that phone call modification is void unless you write it down. You'd be stuck with the original $400 deal.
Makes sense. But the notes also mention something about contracts requiring written modifications. How does that work?
Ah, the no oral modifications clause. This is a huge difference between UCC and common law. Under the UCC, if your contract says this cannot be modified verbally, the law enforces that strictly. You cannot change it over the phone.
And under common law?
Common law generally ignores those clauses.
Wait, really? Why?
Because common law says, hey, you were free to make that rule yesterday, so you have the freedom to mutually ignore it today.
Wow. So common law is totally flexible, but UCC is super rigid about those clauses. That is a massive distinction for the exam.
It is. Always figure out if you're in the UCC world of goods or the common law world of services before you answer.
Okay, this has been an incredible deep dive. Let's do a rapid-fire recap of MSLOU so our listener can lock this in.
Let's do it.
M is for marriage, needs a writing if assets are involved, but not for mutual promises to wed.
S is suretyship. Needs a writing if promising the creditor. But remember the main purpose exception. If you're guaranteeing a loan for your own selfish economic advantage, no paper needed.
L is for land. The initial promise needs a writing, but if a buyer pays, takes possession, and improves the land, part performance saves the deal.
O is the one-year rule. Think absolute theoretical impossibility. And if you work for 6 months on a void 2-year deal, you get restitution for your sweat equity.
And U is the UCC. Goods over $500. Just need a quantity term and a signature. And watch out for custom goods, partial deliveries, and that terrifying 10-day merchant rule.
Honestly, if you just break these down into who's promising what to whom, the exam questions become much less intimidating.
Exactly. Don't just memorize the acronym, understand the relationships.
Absolutely.
Well, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a deeper, almost philosophical thought to mull over while you take a break from your outlines.
Yeah, think about the core premise we started with.
Right. We established that an oral contract, like just a verbal promise, is perfectly valid in theory. The invisible agreement genuinely exists between two people.
It does. But it's entirely unenforceable in court without that physical token, that writing.
So what does that say about the very nature of a promise? In the eyes of the law, does a promise actually exist if you can't force someone to keep it?
It's a heavy thought.
Something to ponder as you keep studying, keep grinding, keep translating these rules into reality, and you're going to crush the MBE. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.